Martinique Brown, and I am the owner and founder of Today I Want to Be. We are solving the problem of kids and youth not seeing someone who looks just like them in a variety of career fields. We are a career exploration resource for parents and educators, and through our interactive products and virtual interviews, kids and youth are able to see representation of their race and gender in career fields that they may not even know about. With every product we create, from our educational aids to our apparel and accessories, we are intentional about encouraging and helping kids and youth see that they can become anything they want to be. We are the only company who not only focuses on career exploration for kids and youth, but we also give them an opportunity to ask professionals about their careers every month during our free live virtual interviews as student co-hosts. If you are looking for a company that is dedicated to helping your child or student see that they can become anything they want to be, make sure you visit todayiwanttobe.com today. Calling all authors and publishers. Did you know Everything Authors has a free downloadable directory of platforms you can promote your book on? No longer will you have to search multiple places to market your book because you can find them here. Download your list today at everythingauthors.com/free-resources. That's everythingauthors.com/free-resources.
You can be a teacher like Miss Joseph. Very good. I see. Or you could be, who remembers? Say, I can be a social worker. Yes, a social worker.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Authors to Know and Their Books to Read. I'm your host, Martinique Brown. I'm so excited that you guys have decided to tune into the show today. I'm really excited about our author today, Janice Pryor Beary. She has written a book called Behind the Scenes. So we're going to learn a lot more about her book. But before we do that, I want to welcome you to the show. Now, if this is your first time ever tuning into the show, make sure that you are always going to that description box, because you know what? I am going to tell you about the description box. And that is actually where Janice's contact information is, as well as where you can purchase her book from Amazon.com. It's right there next to that $sign. But another thing that we would love for you to do is go ahead and share this video so that more people know about Janice and her book, Behind the Scenes. So Janice, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm all excited.
You are welcome. So like I said, if this is your first time ever tuning into the show, this is actually a interactive show. So we encourage you to ask us questions. Well, you don't have to ask me questions, but you can ask Janice questions. You just post them in the comment field. Now, if you're tuning in from any other page other than Martinique Y. Brown or our YouTube page, Everything Authors, then I need you to come to one of those two pages so I can actually see your post, and you can actually make comments and ask Janice questions. But this is going to be a very good interview, because I'm telling you, I was looking at her book summary and I'm like, wow, Janice is so strong. So tune into the show. Like I said, make sure you go ahead and share this video now. So Janice, thank you for being on the show. Can you tell our viewers just a little bit more about yourself and how long you've been a published author?
Yes, I was born and raised in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And then we sort of moved to Chicago, Illinois, and I was there for like 50 years.
Oh, wow.
And while I was there, I learned a lot, a lot of things about life because my mom moved back to the East Coast and that left me there. And
Okay.
I always loved the Lord. And so I had my faith. I believed in God. I was a hard worker. And then one day I thought, I said, I'm going through so much. Nobody else can be going through exactly what I'm going through.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was moved to write this book so other individuals that may be going through the same thing that I went through with can see how God worked with me and how God delivered me, gave me answers to my problems, and sort
Yeah.
of paved the way for me to be successful, in life, even though I was going through so much. So the book was actually released February 2021, and I had a book release in Illinois, but I had so much family and friends on the East Coast. I wanted to do a book signing and
Mm-hmm.
also do another release of that book down here in North Carolina. And so that's why we're here tonight, so that
Okay.
we can share the story and get individuals interested, in possibly, coming out and get the book that they've already purchased signed, or even come out and join us and even purchase a book or ask questions that they want to ask me. I'll be available. Yes.
That's good. That's good. So now, if you all are interested in attending Genesis book signing, I have listed that address in the description box. It's actually going to be on June the 22nd from 12 until 2 p.m. Now, since we're on the book signing, what can people expect when they come?
When they come, I'm new to the area, so I'm not exactly familiar with how the flow would be that day.
Mm-hmm.
But I will have the books there on display, and I will be there during the duration of the time. And we will be in the actual store, as people come and go. And so I'll just be making myself available,
Okay.
for any questions or that they may have. I'm hoping that I can help someone or encourage someone and share some testimonies. Some things are not in the book. I put a lot in the book, but there's some things that are not there, and I'm more than willing to share.
That's,
Whatever the scenario that shows up that day,
mm-hmm.
be able to, encourage and build up individuals that might be at their lowest point.
Yeah.
Because I did find out that even though I thought I was the oddball out and nobody in the world was going through what I was going through or experienced it, I did
Yeah.
find out that there were so many other women that read the book that went through similar things that I went through as well,
Mm-hmm.
with different outcomes even. So
Yeah.
I'm excited about meeting all of those who will stop by that day, so that we can chat and talk and share some stories and,
That's good.
encourage one another. Yes.
So now I know that you mentioned if they stop by, what is the name of the location?
The location is 2810 Cashwell in Goldsboro, North Carolina, the Christian bookstore on
Christian
that
bookstore.
street in that
Okay.
plaza. Yes.
Okay. Christian bookstore. Okay. So now are they actually having an event there, or did you just one day walk in, ask the manager, hey, I'm an author, I'm new to the area. Can I do a book signing here?
I walked in that store being new to the area and I saw all of these books on this one table that were from the community,
Mm-hmm.
community authors. And so I went to her and I said, how can I get my book on that table?
That's good.
And she says, well, you need to have an interview. And then she gave me a date that day. No, I went
Wow.
back and then she gave me a date, of June 22nd and
Mm-hmm.
told me, what I needed to do. And she gave me a 2-hour window to come in, and to be able to host the book signing and or the sales of my book. So that was
That,
really nice. Yeah.
I think that that's awesome that, you took the initiative to talk to them, and you saw, other people's book, and you like, why can't my book be on there?
Right.
But I think that that's really great. That you're going to have the book signing there. Now, I know that you said that you're new to the area. What made you move from Illinois?
I was born and raised in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And
Okay.
in high school, my mother moved us all, to Chicago. And
Okay.
then when she moved back, I got married, not thinking, I can't leave with my mom. I'm married now. I got to stay here in Chicago. So I
Mhm.
stayed in Chicago and built not for profit organizations, being a philanthropist, helping people in the community. And we bought a home and we had children. And
Mhm.
so even though I was going through a lot, I didn't want to hear my mom say, I told you so. So I
Mhm.
sort of toughed it out and tried to make it work, and tried to act like I was okay,
Yeah.
trusting God and listen to the seniors saying, hang in there, baby. Give
Mhm.
them 5 years, 7 years, everything gonna be all right. I waited the 5 years, I waited the 7 years, and it just got tougher and tougher, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
so after a while, I said, you know what? When the grandkids grew up and everybody moved out, the snow in Chicago, I had brain surgery and 2 knee replacements. I said, it's going to be
Wow.
difficult for me to shovel snow and chip ice. And I always wanted to come back home,
Okay.
and I said, when I retire, I'm going to move back home. And so when
Mhm.
I got to that age, the Lord told me it's time for you to go.
That's good.
And when he
That's
said
good.
it's time for you to go, I started looking for houses and property and stuff like that. And the Lord,
Mhm.
blessed me to be able to find a nice home, and then I was found, I was found by a young man, Pastor Beary, and, we got married and we're down here working in ministry together, so I
Oh,
didn't see that
good.
part in the vision.
Yeah. So can you walk us through your book behind the scenes?
Sure, I can walk and give like little nuggets, from
Right.
each book. I wanted to give a little foundation first to identify that I was born in Goldsboro, North Carolina, and so as a child, I talked about, how the family had to work in the tobacco fields every day, and I talked about my first haircut. My cousin, he must have been about 2 or 3, and I cut a big plug out of his head. Trying
Mhm.
to be a barber. I might have been like 4. What am I doing with scissors?
Yeah.
And so when they came home, of course, that I really got a little spanking, for cutting his hair. But living in the country, I talked about, how we cleaned the silver in the sand, and it came out so shiny and so bright, and how we had
Uh-huh.
to walk, down the road and go get the milk from my grandmother, and I was afraid of the cows and everything, and it was just very interesting. One day, my grandpapa, the sow got out the pen, and he was chasing the sow around the pen and passed out. Everybody
Uh,
was trying to help him catch the sow, that got out. And I talked about the property that we lived in. We had no closets, we had no bathrooms, and so slop jars were used for the bathroom. And then they hung the clothes up in the corner of the rooms and covered it with a sheet, to try to
okay.
make the room look nice. It was a lot of us sleeping in one room, and how they had to make a fire in the stove and make hot biscuits and, got up every day and did that, and
Mhm.
how we put in tobacco, and they would bring the tobacco to the house, and they would have to get it ready to take it to the market. So they had to make bundles and wrap it up, nice
Okay.
bundles and prepare it for the market, and then we were living like way down in the country, where you didn't have like neighbors next door. So one day we looked up, we moved to Goldsboro, right on Slaughter Street,
Mhm.
and the big pink house across the street from the church, And so we all moved in the same house, and then it got crowded. And my mom is like, we need to get out of here. But while we
Mhm.
lived in that house, one morning I woke up and there was food on the floor. We had some family members, from Philadelphia. They worked at the barbecue place. I think it was Scott's Barbecue. And they put the food on the floor. So when I got up to go to school that morning, I told my cousins and my sisters, don't eat that food because it's got poison in it. I didn't really know. It must have been the Holy Spirit that had me say it. But when I
Mhm.
went to school and got home that day, my sisters, they were sick in the hospital, and my cousin was there saying he didn't eat any of the food. And they sent me to the store to get a Pepsi, and I brought it back, and they gave him one sip, and then he just was stiff as a board. And my mom had to catch a cab to get him to the hospital, you know. So we almost lost two of my sisters and my cousin while we lived on Slaughter Street, you know, because the people put rat poison on the food with kids in the house and left it on the floor.
Why? Why did they do
If you
that?
wake up as a kid and you see fried chicken and barbecue, you're not thinking anything is wrong with it, you know. And so they ate that, you know,
But
they
why
ate
did
that
the
food.
people do that?
I don't know if we might have had mice or rats, and they were probably trying to kill the
I
mice or
see.
rats. And so they put poison on the food that they had brought from work that they didn't finish eating. And the kids woke up. I was going to school. I was the only one going to school. I went on to school and I said, don't eat that food. You know,
Hmm.
it's got poison in it. I didn't know for sure,
Yeah.
but I didn't want them eating food that had been on the floor all
Right,
night,
right,
you
right.
know. But they did. They woke up, you know, and they saw that fried chicken.
Yeah.
They ate that food. Thank God God saved them, you know, and they didn't
uh,
die from eating the rat poison that was in the food, you know.
yeah.
But eventually, my mom, she moved to the old projects. We got our own place and everything, you know, and that's when I had an experience of dipping snuff. You know,
Mhm.
I had a friend, you know, that came over and said, hey, you know, I got some snuff. You want to dip snuff? And I said, you know, I've never dipped snuff before. So I said, okay. She kept bothering me. I said, just give me a little pinch of it, right?
Mhm.
And so she gave me a little pinch and I chewed it and everything, but she didn't tell me what to do with it, right? So I swallowed it. And I
Okay.
got drunk as a skunk off snuff, and I was dizzy. I got on the little merry-go-round thing, and I
Uh-huh.
was swimming in the head, and I never dipped snuff again. And
Yeah.
then there was one thing that I noticed living in the old projects growing up as a kid, that they always took care of the projects. They always took care of the lawn. They painted every year. They put
Mhm.
horse manure around the trees to make them grow big and pretty. Unlike some projects that we see today that are not as kept as it was when
Right.
I was growing up as a kid. You know,
Mhm.
my mom moved around a lot and then we moved again and she worked nights, you know. And so I wrote about the time that I was always left at home alone with my sisters and how they would be bad sometimes. And I looked up at the light and I had to go to school that night to do a project. My mom
Yeah.
wasn't at home, my sisters were there. And I said, you see that light up there? I said, it's got a camera in it. And mama can see everything you're doing. And she will be able to see exactly what you're doing. And I'm going
Uh-huh.
to school to do my project. And you better not open that door. So what I did, right, was they looking up at the light, thinking mama can see them, right, in the light.
Uh-huh.
And so I ran to school, which was Eastern Elementary. I was like a block or two away from the school, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so guess what? I'm thinking they're gonna call me. I'm gonna do my project. I'm gonna make it back home, right? And so I was like one of the last ones they called. And I'm
Uh-huh.
sitting there thinking, like, you know, I left my sisters at home. I told them not to open the door. My mom is not there, you know. And then when I got ready to come home, it was pitch black. I couldn't see anything. I was afraid. I was walking fast and looking over my shoulder, trying to get home. And when I got home, my mom had beat me home. My sisters had opened the door. They were laying on the floor crying and screaming. And boy, I got another beating because I left those girls at home by themselves. Thank
Okay.
God nothing happened to them, you know,
Right.
because, you know, it was important for me to get that grade, you know,
Right.
and everything. And so I was just trying to make sure I run and do my little project so I could get my grade, you know,
Mhm.
but it was not a good decision. Then after I wrote, I was like, why didn't you take your sisters with you?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
why did you leave them at home by themselves, you know? And, you know, I was
Right.
carrying all my stuff, you know, so that I could do my
Mhm.
display, you know. And then when we lived in that house, you know, my mom had got a new boyfriend, you know, and so we had to be on our best behavior. You know, we got company coming over. She had
Right.
cooked supper and everything. And so we were sitting down, and the biscuits were right in front of me, right? And so I
Mhm.
reached in front of me and I got a biscuit, right? And I got the biscuit and put it on my plate. And my mom said, what are you supposed to say? And I said, excuse me, biscuit, because I didn't reach in front of anybody.
Yeah.
I just said, excuse me, biscuit, because I didn't cross over anybody's plate. It was
Right.
right in front of me. You know, what did I say that for? Boy, when her new boyfriend left, I was tap dancing all over the floor, but she was stinging my legs with that switch because I said, "Excuse me, biscuit."
That is so funny. So now I actually see that Deborah King is tuning in. She said hello. Also, we have Stella is tuning in. Hello, Stella. Thank you so
Hello,
much for
Stella.
tuning into the show. Make sure you guys go ahead and share this video now. If you're just now tuning in, you are watching authors to know in their books to read. And I have Janice Pryor Beary here. She's talking to us a lot more about her book, Behind the Scenes. So also give us a virtual shout out. We will not bite you. So I know that your book actually discusses experience that involve family members and friends. Did you have to give them a heads up that they may read stories about themselves in the book?
I reached out to my publisher and he
Mhm.
said, as long as I keep the story about me and not about them, that I really didn't have to because it's my story,
Okay.
and so I didn't have to, but I did. I reached out and let a few of them know, except for the kids, they already know it's basically my family,
Hmm.
but the others that sort of positively impacted my life, I did let them know, that they were honorably mentioned in my book and they were all excited, that I thought well enough about them to mention them in my book. So for
Hmm.
some I didn't, but for others I felt it would be nice to go ahead and let them know,
Okay.
that I put them in the book, so they were excited about it and everything.
Hmm.
And my children didn't really know the things that mom went through until after they read the book,
Oh
because
wow.
mama's business was mama's business.
Hmm.
So sometimes we share too much information with children, but I'm not that way. I kept it to myself, and they found out. They was like, wow, mom, you went through a lot. So I was glad that I was able to share this story so that they can see, how the Lord took care of us through everything we went through.
Right. Right. But let me ask you, do you feel like since they did have to learn about these experiences through the book, did that cause a bigger conversation with you and your kids?
It did, because my daughter, she was like, oh, she said, oh, mom, she said, I just thought dad was crazy. She said, I didn't know that he was on drugs because I never said anything about that.
Hmm.
We did go for counseling and stuff like that, but I called it family counseling,
Okay.
but we did participate in Alateen, Alanon, Narcotics Anonymous, because eventually, in one of the chapters, it talks about, he had to tell us, what was really going, because I thought it was Slits malt liquor, because he drank a
Hmm.
lot of Slits. I never thought about drugs or anything like that.
Okay.
And so on the job said, hey, we want to help you. But in order to help you, you got to go to Alcoholics Anonymous and whatever they
Mm.
recommend you do. And one of the steps was that he had to tell me, and that's when I found out that it was a Slits malt liquor. One time he crashed the car, another time he came home and his arm was slashed open. And I
Whew.
thought he had peed in the bed. I said, oh, the bed is wet, and so I got up and I saw it was blood where he had fallen in the parking lot and sliced his arm open and just came home and
Woo.
fell in the bed, and so it was stuff like that even I didn't know he was on drugs. I thought it was just drinking too much and that it was alcohol or beer,
Hmm.
so when he told us, we were all, and when my kids found out in the book, they was like, they just thought that dad was crazy. They didn't realize that he had a problem, you know
Hmm.
and they didn't
Hmm.
realize that because of the problem that I was going through a lot that they didn't even know about, and stuff. So yes, my grandson even recommended that, because I did it like based on addresses where we lived and moved, to go back and delve in a little more at each address and have subsets of this book, So thinking
Okay.
about that,
Okay.
adding a little
Okay.
bit more detail.
Oh wow. Okay. So shout out to Keith Newell. He says
Hi,
hello.
Keith.
Hey Keith. Keith, make sure you go ahead and share this video now so that more people know about Behind the Scenes, the book. How long were you two together?
We were together about 16 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 16 years. I got a divorce, but he still wouldn't leave and get out the house, and stuff like that. And so we were together about 16 years. And then it got to the point that the baby girl was throwing up every time he left, because then she wasn't like born doing the big drug thing. I had her, she was the last one. And the
Okay.
other two had gone through so much. When I saw her getting sick and throwing up and nervous about dad and what he was doing, I says,
Hmm.
this is enough. The other two kids have already been traumatized and went through so much already.
Yeah.
I don't want this one to have that experience, of
Hmm.
dad, trying to do what he needed to do to go and get drugs and stuff like that. So I made a decision that whether you want to or not, you have to go. So
Hmm.
he was working for the Salvation Army. They had a program in Kansas City. And so that's how I was able to get him out and keep him out, because he had to go to Kansas City for a year program.
Okay.
And I had to make up my mind, that we needed some peace and we needed to heal, and it's very difficult when you got to sleep with your purse and the car is
Mm.
stolen, computers are stolen, because of the disease of alcohol and drug abuse,
Yeah.
So yeah, so and that was when I made up my mind. When Monique was in elementary school, the baby girl, I said, this is enough, she's throwing up and stuff, being sick by what she's experiencing. And I said, I didn't want that to happen,
Hmm.
to her. We've already been negatively impacted. I had a nervous stomach, and
Yeah.
the other two kids were fighting, it was just dysfunctional family,
Hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder though. So I know that you said that he was in some type of counseling. Um did he ever stop taking drugs altogether?
Yes, he went to every program it was on the south side of Chicago.
Okay.
And he got in one program at Ingalls Hospital. They had an in care program where he stayed there in their program. And he was sober for about 2 years. I was very supportive, wanted to make
Okay.
sure I was there for him. So I still went with him, even I couldn't go in, I still went. And then one day, after 2 years of sobriety and drug free, a cousin came over with a new car and said, come on, man, come
Mm.
on, take a ride with me in my new car.
Okay.
But when he came back, 2 years was gone down the drain, and he was
Oh.
crying and asking me to pray for him and everything. And so I did, but it was tough, for him to try to get back. And so after that, that's when he moved out of state to change the people, places, stuff
Hmm.
like that, to try to get away. So but
So,
he did have 2 good years where he was sober.
yeah, I mean that's awesome because before you get to 3 years, you got to hit 2 years first.
Yes,
Um,
right.
but I do want to tell our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. You can actually learn more about Janice's book behind the scenes right there at the dollar sign in the description box. Click on that link and it's going to direct you to Amazon.com, specifically where you can purchase her book at. Read the book summary and you will be able to learn a lot more about her book as well. Make sure you give us a virtual shout out. Let us know you are in the house. But I do have a question for you. I know that you were saying that you grew up in the church, and at that time, though, were you a Christian?
Yes, I was sort of like born in the faith.
Okay.
So from a kid on growing up, we were always in church and we always participated in the programs. And our grandmother's the one that instilled salvation into us, and taught
Okay.
us about the Lord. And there was a period of time my mom moved to Chicago first, and my auntie moved to Baltimore. So our granny had six of us that she raised together,
Oh
because
wow.
our mothers was trying to find a better life for us. And so we were all like born in the faith from the time that we were born up. Like I mentioned in the book that I wanted to do tap, but I couldn't do tap because I was told that it was a sin,
What
and
is tap? Like tap dancing?
tap dancing. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, I love to dance. They used to call me out on the porch. Come on, fake girl, do
Okay.
your thing. I was a little girl doing the twist, breaking it all down, to the back,
Uh,
bending all back, and everything. Every time
yeah.
we get together, they call me on the porch because I enjoyed dancing. But she said dancing was a sin, so I was like,
Mhm.
okay, Mother Pearlie, so I didn't get to go tap dancing.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you can tap dance. We'll give you
That's
permission.
right, I'm free.
Uh-huh. So shout out to Taekwon. He said this is a great testimony, and he's going to purchase a couple of books. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Taekwon.
Thank you.
Also, shout out to Jonathan. He said Jonathan Positive Force Gilbert. He says hello.
Hello,
Um,
Jonathan.
but let me ask you this: with someone that grew up in the faith, knows who Jesus Christ is, why do you feel like you stayed in that type of relationship for so long?
I stayed in that relationship so long because initially, when we were growing up, we were told that God didn't honor divorce. So I didn't think I could get a divorce,
Okay.
and like I told you, the older people was talking about, hang in there, baby. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
get better by and by. Just hang in there. So
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to hang in there. You know what I mean? But it was getting worse to a point he tried to kill me a couple of times, which I mentioned in the book,
Mm-hmm.
and he was choking me and strangling me. And so happened my son was standing there who couldn't have been no more than like 3 or 4 with a butcher knife, probably trying to say, I want to save my mama, but I don't want to kill my daddy. And when
Yeah.
he saw him standing there, he dropped me, but he was choking me out, on one
Mm-hmm.
occasion. So I kept them in the marriage because I didn't think God wanted me to get a divorce. And
Mm-hmm.
then I started to reading the Bible because, growing up, there was one Bible in the house. Like we didn't all have our own individual Bibles that we could read, and find out about things on our own. We found out about God by grandma telling us about God,
Okay.
because there was no little books that we had. We just got round table discussions and Sunday school and,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, but I got my Bible, and because the Lord told me when we didn't have food, you know what to do. You know what to do. You don't have to sit here and starve. You know what to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember that they taught me how to can food as a kid. I didn't
Okay.
like it then, but that was a skill that I could grab and make
Yeah.
sure me and my kids had food to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, I rededicated my life to the Lord. Because, of
Okay.
course, in the 70s, I was out there, doing everything in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
that I was big enough to do. But then I rededicated my life to the Lord.
That's
And
good.
I got back in that word. I bought me a Bible. And I was like, I'm sure God doesn't want me to stay with somebody who's trying to kill me, who's trying
Mm.
to destroy me, who's abusing our children,
Yeah.
who's making it difficult for us to have a peaceful home. And that was what set me free. I was reading the Bible and I found out that the Lord's will was for me to have peace, and there was no peace in that home. He was always fighting and pushing and
Mm-hmm.
shoving me and cursing me out and cursing the kids out, yelling and screaming in my ear,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get money from me, pawning the car for drugs, and then, when he wrecked the car, I couldn't drive the car. I had to find a way to work, find a way to church.
Mm.
Or he'd be driving down the street with his car and I had to walk wherever I had to go,
Mm-hmm.
and he wouldn't let me go anywhere. That I lived in a little house that looked like a garage behind houses in the alley, and it had like tile in the ceiling and paneling on the walls. There were many a days that I counted those tiles in the ceiling and I counted those paneling on the wall because he would be sitting outside and not allow me to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He don't call my friends and said I changed my mind. I didn't want to go. So,
Okay.
he hindered me from going anywhere, and it was just such an abusive situation. But when God said that he wanted me to have peace, that set me free.
Yeah.
Then I got a
Amen.
strategy together because
That's
I'm
good.
still here in Chicago by myself with no mother, no father, no uncle, no cousins, nobody except my husband and his family and my
Mm-hmm.
children. And so I started saving money, and I hid it up under the rug at my grandmother-in-law's house. And when I got enough money saved, in one of the chapters, I described how he and his mom was going to go to Chicago, and I was so thankful that they didn't take my baby boy Rob. We called him Junebug.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were going to Chicago, I had already gotten my money out from under that rug that I saved, so I
Mm-hmm.
could get me a plane ticket to Baltimore.
Oh,
And so I
wow.
got that money, and my cousin, my best friend, hid me out in Chicago for a week because I knew he was going to be calling my mom and trying to look for me. So I had been taking clothes to her house every time I went to her house to visit, putting clothes in the trunk. And then that day I got ready to escape, from that abuse. They took me to Chicago. One of the cops in the village helped me get away, and took me to his family's house in Chicago to get
Mm-hmm.
me out of that situation. And after a week, I caught a plane to Baltimore. And my mom didn't even know where I was for a week. I'm sure she
Mm-hmm.
was worried, but I didn't want her to lie for me. You
Right.
know, I didn't want her to lie or send for me, to try to say that I wasn't there. So I
Mm-hmm.
stayed out a week, and then I showed up at her door, and that's when she knew I was still alive and that I was well. So
So
God
your
put some
mom was
good
living
people in
in
my life.
Baltimore.
My mom was living in Baltimore.
I
Yeah.
see.
She
Okay.
moved back to the East Coast in the year I got married. So I had
Okay.
to stay, with my husband in Chicago. And her and my sisters moved back to the East Coast.
Okay. Okay. And I just feel like this is just such a heroic, story for you. And I just think it's so important that we hear people's stories because we look at people's current life and but we don't get to hear what they dealt with in the past. And so,
Right.
like, just looking at you, no one would ever expect that's what you went
Amen.
through.
Amen. God
Yeah.
took care of me. Amen.
Yeah. But I definitely like to use this platform to help individuals currently where they're at and then in the future where they're going. Were there any signs that you saw while you and your ex-husband were dating that kind of were some red flags?
Yeah, there was a red flag that I really just dismissed it. In the 70s, we wore halter tops.
Okay.
And so he came to visit, and so I had on a halter top and told me, "You go take that off." And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, but everybody wears halter tops, you know what I mean? That's what we wear these days. Hip hooks, halter tops,
Mm-hmm.
hip huggers and halter tops. And he was like, go and take that off. And one time we were walking, and he walked way ahead of me and didn't walk with me because I had makeup on. And so I was like, what in the world?
Mm-hmm.
uh, I've never seen anything like this before. So he wouldn't even walk with me. So I
Mm-hmm.
did see a couple of red flags. But I sort of like dismissed them, because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, whatever, you know what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean? But
Like
when I
he'll get
look
over
back,
it.
yeah, when I look back, I was like, yeah, I should have made note of that.
Mm-hmm.
I should have made note of that.
So, what would you say to individuals who are currently in abusive relationships? And when we say abusive, we don't just mean physical, but it can be verbal as well. So, what would you
Yeah,
say
it
to
could
those
be
people?
mental, verbal, even spiritual, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And physical, so many different types. And I experienced all of them, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? I would say there is a level of abuse with counseling and care and conversation and working things out. You can work things out, but when it
Mm-hmm.
gets to a point that your life is threatened and you have been abused mentally, spiritually, and physically, then you need to think about yourself and your safety and
Mm-hmm.
your children and their safety.
Mm-hmm.
Because my girlfriend's daughter was filing for a divorce. Her husband was a policeman, and she was an educator. And one
Mm-hmm.
day, they agreed to get the divorce and everything. One day, he went to her place of employment, and he killed her and left two
Woo!
children. So you would think, like, if you agreed to get a divorce, why would you want to kill her?
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on the severity. I would not advise no man, because they get abused too, and no
Mm-hmm.
woman to stay in an abusive relationship to the point that somebody's trying to kill you, beat
Yeah.
you down, hurt you, hurt your children.
Mm-hmm.
I would say you need to get out and get to a shelter for those that are
Mm-hmm.
abused so that you can be protected and so that they can sort of keep you safe, until they can come up with a plan for you to be able to move on with your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would never advise for anyone to stay in an abusive relationship,
That's good. That's good.
because it just gets worse. If you don't do anything about it, it gets worse. And mine got really worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really bad. So
Mm-hmm.
I thank God that I knew a higher power, that I could tell all my problems to. And I wrote a poem titled "The Tears on My Pillow," and it
Mm-hmm.
walls could talk, because there were many a nights I was crying, trying to figure out what could I do, to keep myself safe and to keep my children safe.
Mm-hmm.
One night, the Holy Spirit told me to get up now and get out. And it was like
Mm-hmm.
an audible voice. I got up and I grabbed my kids, and they laughed at me because I grabbed the microwave. But he was pawning everything for drugs, and they were like $400. I
Mm-hmm.
rolled around trying to find a hotel for me and my kids to live in, because the Lord told me to get up now and get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up, but I stayed up at the window all night. I was afraid he was going to find me,
Mm-hmm.
that he was going to see my car. I thought he was going to look for me, at the hotels, and my kids were in bed. And I stayed up all night watching over my children
Yeah.
because I was afraid he was going to find me. And then later
Mm-hmm.
I found out that he was really acting weird that night, playing love songs in my ear with the radio. And I was tired. And I said, I'm tired, I just need
Mm-hmm.
some rest. And he kept putting the radio in my ear with all these love songs. And then his cousin who lived downstairs said that night he had came down and said he was going to heat up an iron and put it to my face. And that's why the
What?
Lord told me to get up now and get out. And when he went
That is
downstairs, I
crazy.
grabbed my kids, I threw them in the car, and we got out of there. I didn't know what the danger was, but the tone of the Lord's voice speaking to me, I knew he needed me to get up and get out now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so abuse is just not necessary to me. If you're not getting along and you just can't make it, just leave. Just to
Yeah.
agree to disagree. It's not working, and just
Mm-hmm.
leave.
Mm-hmm.
Don't beat each other up or try to hurt one another. There are millions of people out there that you can find that could be compatible to you.
Yeah.
Don't hurt your wife, don't hurt your husband, don't hurt your
Mm-hmm.
children. Children are a result of the abuse. You take it out on the kids, then
Mm-hmm.
they're abused. you
Right.
know.
Right.
So I would say keep yourself in a safe place. If it's
Yeah.
getting to a type of abuse where things are happening to you, and you're not being treated right, and you feel your life is in danger, your children's life is in danger, you got to sleep with one eye open, you need to get up and get out.
Amen.
That would be my
Amen.
advice to anyone
Amen.
who's going through any type of abuse. Get up
Amen.
and get out. Yes.
Amen. Shout out to Janice Minor. She said, "Hello, my
Hi,
sister."
sister.
She said, "I did not know. She didn't know this, and she said she loves you."
I love you too. I love you too.
So, at any point, during this time, did you ever become angry with God for allowing you to go through these things?
No, I never got angry because I love the Lord, and I knew He was real because I witnessed miracles growing up as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
People being delivered from alcohol and drugs, being purged. I witnessed the power of God. So I
Mm-hmm.
knew He was real, and I didn't get angry with Him. But I was like, why so long, Lord? When is my breakthrough coming? What am I
Mm-hmm.
going to do? I'm in Illinois all by myself. I don't have any family here, just me and my kids. I don't know who to turn to. I tried to turn to my in-laws, but of course, blood is thicker than water. So they're going to try to protect, and advise him. So I didn't have advice except for some of those little seniors, that was trying to advise me, and so I had a lot of tears. I cried a lot of nights, and I had to work like double shifts just to make enough money, for my children and I, to have a shelter over our head and food on the table, because my husband was sick. He was
Mm-hmm.
stealing everything that wasn't nailed down, and he was just very abusive. He was very angry,
Mm-hmm.
and like he told me, he said when he was growing up as a kid, he didn't grow up believing he wanted to be an alcoholic and drug abuser. As
Mm-hmm.
a matter of fact, he said that he tried crack 10 times before it did anything. And I said, well,
Mm-hmm.
God was trying to tell you then you shouldn't be trying to do crack cocaine,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But he said he kept trying, and he worked a job that was swing shift, and he was trying to stay awake, and they advised him with that. He
Mm.
said 10 times, he tried it, and it took 10 times, and then he was hooked, of course,
Okay.
dealing with the issue of drugs. And I'm sure that there are many others who look up and try to say, the question is, how did I get here?
Mm-hmm.
What happened? When did I make the wrong turn?
Right.
All these individuals that struggle, with the drug abuse are not bad people. They got great
Mm-hmm.
qualities. They're intelligent. They're smart. They're good people, but
Right.
they just have something that has taken control,
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to find the answer, trying to find their way out. So I have compassion on all of those individuals that are still
Mm-hmm.
today, trying to be free of alcohol and drug abuse.
Right.
And I mentioned in my book, that my husband was a veteran at that time,
Mm.
and came home and came home honorable, under medical conditions. So he came
Okay.
home sick, and so, my heart goes out to all the veterans that went away and came home and they had issues. And then a lot of them, didn't realize how beneficial it was to get that medical care through the VA, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm home,
Right.
that little something that they're going to do, it ain't nothing, so a lot of our men came home and didn't go and follow through, and get the medical attention that they needed. And it just progressively got worse,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm. So
progressively
I
got worse.
I know that you actually mentioned to us that I think you married a pastor, Pastor Beary.
Yes, yes.
So were there any issues that you had to overcome so that you can learn how to trust men again, or did you always just, even though you had a abusive marriage, were you still, able to trust, men and, be not really
Yeah.
have issues with dating men and
Well, I sort of
married?
like didn't date, I sort of like turned to my kids and wanted to make sure I
Okay.
took care of them. I tried to date a couple of times and it just didn't work out, the lifestyle I was trying to live and the
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle they were trying to live, but when I met Pastor Barry, I'm a trusting person. I always
Okay.
think people are like me, I ain't great, but I try to be a woman of my word. I try to be
Yeah.
honest. I try to live the way the Lord would have for me to live. So I always start out trusting. You
I
know what I mean?
understand.
I
Mm-hmm.
trust people until,
Prove you
they prove
wrong.
to me, that they can't be trusted. I
Right.
may lose a little some, a little money being trusted, and trying to help people out and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But no, when I fell in love with Pastor Barry, I didn't have any issues. And he was
Mm-hmm.
very transparent, and told me everything that he went through and all the
Yeah.
struggles he had in his life. He didn't hide anything from me, so
Yeah.
because he shared everything and didn't hide everything, I trusted him,
That's good.
and so we'll getting to know each other day by day and learning each other day by day and
Mm-hmm.
working in the ministry, you know what I mean, and working through situations that come up, because we truly believe that the Lord put us together and to put us together to do a great work,
That's good.
for God, for the building of the kingdom of God. And
Yeah.
that nobody is perfect. Our home is so peaceful. We're so much
Mhm.
alike, it's unbelievable.
What you gonna do with all that peace?
I love it.
What you?
I love it. I love it. It's just so peaceful. I love it.
Uh,
Nobody's spitting and yelling and screaming in my
yeah,
ear and
yeah.
stuff like that. I love it.
Well, you know what, Janice, just listening to your story, I'm just so happy that God has allowed you to experience that intimate type of love.
Amen.
Because
Amen. It was a
It's
long
yeah,
time, boy,
long
I
time
tell you.
coming. Like, where you been,
And at that
Pastor
time, I
Perry?
wasn't even thinking about it. I wasn't even thinking about it. I came home
Right.
for my 50th class reunion, and this brother
Uh-huh.
walked in and sat next to me, and we talked and ate and talked, and he was trying to promote my book for me and find me
Okay.
some contact. He was such an advocate for me. And I was like, and he had such a nice spirit.
Yeah.
His spirit was just so nice. And so because I moved away as a teenager, all my classmates were there and I couldn't recognize anybody. I was
Hmm.
like, oh my God, who's who? So he said, here's my number. When you
So
get
he was
home,
an old classmate.
yeah, yeah, but I didn't know him then. I didn't meet him until 50 years later,
Okay.
at the 50th class reunion.
Hmm.
He said that when you get home, pull out your class book and we'll look at the pictures tonight and I'll help you identify who's who. And we never stopped talking.
So when you saw his old picture, were you like, I remember him?
I didn't.
You're like, I still don't remember you.
I didn't remember him, but he had the prettiest smile ever.
Oh, that's good. I'm so happy for you. I'm just
Yeah.
so happy for you. Janice, I just definitely appreciate you sharing your story with us. I appreciate your boldness and just your transparency in your book and your ability to just continue to trust God through all of this because like Taekwon was saying, this is definitely a testimony. If you're interested in purchasing Janice's book, make sure you go to that description box, and right there next to the dollar sign is actually the book purchasing link. It's going to direct you to Amazon.com. Now, you all can actually stay in contact with Janice through her email, and that's also in that description box. Like we were talking about a little bit earlier, Janice actually has a book signing coming up on June 22nd from 12 p.m. until 2 p.m. And that is going to be at the Christian bookstore. And that address is listed in the description box. Make sure you all definitely support Janice. If you're not in the North Carolina area, you can still purchase her book by clicking on that link that's right there next to the dollar sign. We definitely appreciate you all for taking time to tune in to another episode of Authors to Know and Their Books to Read. If you've enjoyed this program, you can definitely donate to Everything Authors. That information is at the bottom of the description box. We hope that you all have a great remainder of the night, and we will talk to you all later.
And
Bye.
thank you, everyone. Bye bye.